Join us as we journey through the pages of classic fairy tales, revisiting beloved stories and rediscovering the magic that has captivated generations. Let the soothing voices of our narrators transport you to a world of wonder, where you can escape the hustle and bustle of everyday life and immerse yourself in the timeless beauty of these enchanting tales. Whether you are a child or a child at heart, these stories will transport you to a world of wonder and imagination, where you can experience the joy of discovery and the power of hope. So sit back, relax, and let the magic unfold. Starting with Princess Cinderella.
Once upon a time, in a faraway land, there was a young and kind-hearted girl named Cinderella. She lived with her wicked stepmother and two selfish stepsisters, who never missed an opportunity to make her life difficult. They made her do all the chores, sleep in a dusty attic, and wore fine dresses while she had only tattered rags. But even in her hardships, Cinderella remained gentle and hopeful. Each day, she found comfort in her animal friends, birds, mice, and horses that lived in the stables. Her favorite companions were the mice, especially Jack and Gus, who always tried to cheer her up. One day, news arrived at their home, a grand ball arranged by the royal prince. He was searching for a bride, and all the young ladies in the kingdom were invited. Cinderella's heart leaped with joy at the thought of attending and possibly dancing with the prince. Her stepmother, however, had different plans. "You can come only if you finish all the chores and find something suitable to wear," her stepmother sneered, fully aware that Cinderella had nothing suitable to wear. With hope in her heart, Cinderella worked tirelessly to complete her chores. In the attic, she found an old gown belonging to her late mother and decided to mend it. Her animal friends helped in sewing, adding beads and ribbons until it was a beautiful dress. When the stepsisters saw Cinderella in her gown, they became furious and tore it to shreds, leaving Cinderella heartbroken. She fled to the garden, crying quietly. Suddenly, her fairy godmother appeared. With a wave of her wand and the magic words, "Bibbidi-bobbidi-boo," the fairy godmother transformed a pumpkin into a splendid carriage. Mice into horses, a horse into a coachman, and a dog into a footman. Cinderella's ragged dress became a stunning gown, and glass slippers gleamed on her feet. But remember, the fairy godmother warned, the magic will end at midnight. Cinderella thanked her profusely and set off to the ball. The ball was magnificent. All eyes were on Cinderella when she entered, and the prince was enchanted by her beauty, grace, and kindness. They danced and talked all night long, creating jealousy amongst the other guests. As the clock struck midnight, Cinderella remembered the fairy godmother's warning. She dashed away without a word, leaving behind a puzzled prince and a single glass slipper on the palace steps. The next day, the prince declared he would marry the girl whose foot fit the glass slipper. A royal emissary carried the slipper to every house in the kingdom. Cinderella's stepmother, jealous of her beauty, locked her in the attic to prevent her from attending the ball. However, with the help of her animal friends, Jack and Gus came to Cinderella's with the key. Cinderella reached the palace just in time. She tried the slipper, and it fit perfectly. The prince, overjoyed to have found his mysterious ball partner, proposed to Cinderella. They were married in a grand ceremony, and Cinderella lived happily ever after with her prince. Please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more videos.
Snow White's story.
Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, there lived a kind and beautiful princess named Snow White. Her skin was as white as snow, her lips as red as blood, and her hair as black as ebony. She was loved by all for her gentle and sweet nature, but her stepmother, the queen, was envious of Snow White's beauty. The queen had a magical mirror, and each day she would ask it, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" For many years, the mirror always replied that the queen was the fairest. But one day, the mirror told her that Snow White had become the fairest in the land. Overcome with jealousy, the queen decided Snow White must be eliminated. She ordered a huntsman to take Snow White deep into the woods and kill her. The queen also commanded him to bring back Snow White's heart as proof. However, when the huntsman took Snow White into the woods, he couldn't bring himself to harm her. He begged Snow White to run far away and never return to the kingdom. Snow White, with tears in her eyes, fled into the dark forest, leaving all she had ever known behind. Lost and frightened, Snow White stumbled upon a little cottage. Inside, she found 7 tiny beds lined up in a row. Curled up in the beds, exhausted from her journey, she fell asleep. When the owners of the cottage, 7 dwarfs, returned home that evening, they were surprised to find Snow White sleeping in their beds. Once awake, Snow White explained her predicament to the dwarfs, who took pity on her and invited her to stay with them. She gratefully accepted and promised to cook, clean, and take care of the little house. Meanwhile, in the castle, the queen again asked her magic mirror who was the fairest. To her horror, the mirror responded, "Snow White, who lives with the 7 dwarfs, is the fairest of them all." The queen, furious that Snow White was still alive, disguised herself as an old peddler woman and set off to find the cottage. When Snow White was alone, the queen offered her a poisoned apple. Snow White took a bite and fell into a deep, magical sleep that resembled death. The dwarfs were heartbroken when they found her, believing she had died. They could not bear to bury her, so they placed her in a glass coffin in the forest, where they mourned her loss. One day, a prince came riding through the forest and saw Snow White in her glass coffin. Enchanted by her beauty, he kissed her, and the spell was broken. Snow White woke up, and to everybody's joy, she was alive and well. The prince asked Snow White to be his queen, and she agreed, grateful to him for freeing her from the curse. Snow White and her prince lived happily ever after, far beyond the reach of the envious queen's magic. And so, the lovely Snow White, reunited with her prince and forever in the hearts of her friends, the 7 dwarfs, found the happy life she so richly deserved. Please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more videos.
Sleeping Beauty Story.
Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, there lived a kind king and a gracious queen who longed for a child. One day, their wish came true, and the queen gave birth to a lovely baby daughter. The king and queen were overjoyed and named her Aurora, after the dawn. Invitations were quickly sent out for a grand celebration, to which everyone in the kingdom was invited, except for one ominous figure, the wicked fairy named Maleficent. At the grand feast, the king and queen welcomed 12 fairies, each with a gift of blessings for the young princess. The fairies bestowed upon Aurora various gifts, such as beauty, kindness, and wisdom. But just as the 11th fairy was about to give her gift, the air turned cold, and the candles flickered. Suddenly, Maleficent appeared in a cloud of violet smoke. Her eyes were as dark as the night, and her voice echoed with malice. "How dare you not invite me?" Maleficent exclaimed. In her anger, she cursed the beautiful Aurora, saying, on her 16th birthday, she will prick her finger on the spindle of a spinning wheel and die. The entire hall gasped in horror. The king and queen were in despair, pleading with Maleficent to take back her curse, but she vanished in a swirl of shadow. Then, the 12th fairy, who had not yet given her gift, stepped forward. "I cannot undo Maleficent's curse," she said, "but I can soften it. On her 16th birthday, when she pricks her finger, Princess Aurora will fall into a deep sleep instead of dying. The sleep will last for 100 years, and she will only be awakened by the kiss of true love." Though relieved, the king and queen were still fearful for their daughter's safety. To protect her, they ordered every spinning wheel in the kingdom be destroyed. Aurora grew up in beauty and grace, unaware of the danger that loomed over her. As years passed, her charm captured the hearts of all who knew her. On the day of her 16th birthday, Aurora wandered through the castle and found a secret tower. There, in a dusty corner, sat an old spinning wheel, untouched by the rest of the land. Curious, Aurora reached out to the wheel. It seemed to call her, each thread as enticing as fairy gold. As she touched the spindle, the curse came to fruition. She pricked her finger and fell to the floor, her eyelids fluttering closed as if she were settling into a gentle dream. Devastated, the king and queen laid her in the highest room of the tallest tower, upon a bed of rose petals, and the castle fell silent in her absence. They decreed that the entire kingdom should sleep along with their beloved princess until the enchantment was broken. The court never spoke nor stirred. All awaited the twist of fate's hand. As decades flowed into centuries, vines crawled over the gates and towers, weaving lush blankets over the forgotten kingdom, creating a mysterious forest that shrouded it from view. Legends of the sleeping princess traveled far and wide, reaching a brave young prince in a distant land. Determined by the tales and the thought of awakening the princess, the prince embarked on a journey as wild as the enchanted forest itself. He battled thickets of thorns and tangled underbrush. Finally, he arrived at the towering castle wrapped in briars and found the princess room up in the tower. The prince, entranced by the sleeping beauty, leaned in and kissed her gently. As he did, a spell broke, and the princess awoke, her eyes fluttering open. They fell in love instantly and were married in a grand ceremony. The kingdom rejoiced, celebrating the awakening of their beloved princess. And they lived happily ever after. Please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more videos.
Rapunzel's story.
Once upon a time, in a land far away, there was a couple who longed for a child. They lived next to a beautiful garden that belonged to a wicked witch. One day, the wife noticed some fresh Rapunzel, a type of leafy vegetable, growing in the witch's garden and craved it more than anything. Her husband, wanting to please her, snuck into the witch's garden and stole some of the Rapunzel for his wife. She made a delicious salad and soon felt better, but as her craving grew, she asked her husband to fetch more. On his second trip to the garden, the wicked witch caught him. Furious, she demanded to know why he was stealing the Rapunzel. The man explained about his wife's cravings, and the witch softened a little. However, she made a cruel bargain. She would allow him to take all the Rapunzel he wanted, but he must give her their firstborn child. The man, in his fear, hastily agreed. When the baby was born, the witch appeared and took the girl, naming her Rapunzel after the plant. Rapunzel grew into the most beautiful child under the sun. Her hair, as shiny and golden as the morning light, was never cut and grew longer with each passing day. The witch locked her away in a tower deep in the forest which had neither stairs nor a door, only a small window high above. Whenever the witch wanted to visit her, she would stand beneath the tower and call out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Rapunzel would then throw her long braided hair out of the window, and the witch would climb up. Years went by, and one day a young prince happened to ride through the forest and heard Rapunzel's sweet song floating down from the tower. Enchanted by her voice, he searched until he found the tower and saw the beautiful Rapunzel at the window. Unable to figure out how to reach her, he returned day after day to listen. Then he saw the witch and learned how she climbed up the tower using Rapunzel's hair. The next day, when the sun was setting, he stood under the tower and shouted, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Rapunzel, thinking it was the witch, let her hair tumble down, and up climbed the prince. They fell deeply in love, and the prince devised a plan to rescue her from the witch's clutches. With the help of a loyal friend, they managed to escape the tower and the witch's clutches. The prince and Rapunzel were married in a grand ceremony, and they lived happily ever after. Please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more videos.
The Frog Prince Story.
Once upon a time, in a grand castle by a serene pond, there lived a beautiful young princess. She had everything a princess could wish for, but she also possessed a wayward golden ball, her favorite toy which she loved more than anything else. One sunny afternoon, as she was playing near the pond, the ball slipped from her delicate hands and rolled into the water. The princess gasped in horror, for the pond was deep and dark, and the golden ball sank out of sight. She was about to start crying when suddenly she heard a croaky voice saying, "Don't cry, princess. I can fetch your ball, but what will you give me in return?" The astonished princess looked around and saw a plump, green frog swimming at the surface of the pond. "Oh, dear frog," she pleaded, "if you bring back my golden ball, I will give you anything you wish." You can have all my jewels or even my crown." The frog lifted his head and croaked, "I do not desire your trinkets, but if you agree to let me eat from your plate and sleep on your bed, then I will retrieve your ball." The princess, wanting her ball back so desperately, quickly agreed to the frog's terms, even though she found him rather repulsive. The frog dove into the pond, and with a splash, he disappeared. Moments later, he emerged holding the golden ball in his wide mouth. He placed it gently at the princess's feet. Overjoyed, the princess picked up her ball and ran back to the castle, forgetting all about her promise. The very next day, during supper, there was a peculiar tapping at the door. To the princess's surprise, it was the frog. "Princess, unlock the door for me. Remember your promise." The king, who was sitting at the head of the table, asked his daughter about the guest at the door. With a blush of embarrassment, she recounted the tale of the ball and the frog, and the promise she had made. The king, being wise and just, said, "A promise must be kept. Invite the frog in, my dear." So, the princess unwillingly let the frog inside. The frog hopped across the room and leaped onto the table beside her plate. "May I eat from your plate, princess?" he asked politely. The princess grudgingly shared her meal with him, trying to hide her discomfort. After supper, the frog asked, "May I sleep on your pillow, princess?" The princess sighed, but knew she had to honor her word. She allowed the frog to lie beside her on her silken pillow. As morning's first light kissed the castle walls, the princess awoke to find not a frog beside her, but a handsome prince. The prince smilingly explained, "I was under a wicked witch's spell, and only a kind heart could free me." The princess, realizing the importance of keeping promises and valuing kindness, was overjoyed. With hearts full of gratitude, the princess and the prince became great friends, eventually falling in love and creating their own happily ever after. And thus, the tale of the Frog Prince reminds all of us that promises are powerful, kindness is magical, and love can transform the darkest spells. Please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more videos.
Little Red Riding Hood's story.
Once upon a time, in a small village, there was a sweet little girl who wore a beautiful red cloak given to her by her grandmother. She loved it so much that everyone called her Little Red Riding Hood. One day, her mother said, "Take this basket of goodies to your grandmother's house. She's feeling ill. Remember, stay on the path and don't talk to strangers." Excitedly, Little Red Riding Hood set off on her journey through the forest. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and the wildflowers were in full bloom. As she skipped along, she suddenly met a sly, cunning wolf who popped out from behind a tree. "Good morning, Little Red Riding Hood," the wolf said with a toothy grin. "Where are you going this fine day?" "I'm going to visit my sick grandmother and bring her this basket of food," she replied, forgetting her mother's advice. "What a kind girl you are," said the wolf, eyes glinting with a mischievous plan. "Why not take a few flowers to your grandmother too?" She saw no harm in this and strayed from the path, picking the prettiest flowers she could find. Meanwhile, the wily wolf dashed straight to the grandmother's cottage. Arriving swiftly, the wolf knocked on the door. "Who's there?" called the grandmother weakly. "It's your dear granddaughter, Little Red Riding Hood," lied the wolf. "Lift the latch and come in," the grandmother responded. The wolf quickly opened the door and gobbled her up in a single gulp. Then, he dressed in her clothes, put on her glasses, and hopped into bed, waiting for Little Red Riding Hood to arrive. Before long, Little Red Riding Hood came cheerfully to the cottage door, her arms full of flowers. She entered and went straight to the bedside. "Grandmother, what big ears you have," she exclaimed. "The better to hear you with, my dear," replied the disguised wolf. "Grandmother, what big eyes you have. The better to see you with, my dear," the wolf said. "But grandmother, what big teeth you have. The better to eat you with," roared the wolf, leaping out of the bed. Little Red Riding Hood screamed and jumped back just as a passing woodsman heard the ruckus. He burst into the cottage with his axe, scaring the wolf. The woodsman chased the wolf away, and out ran the wolf into the forest, never to be seen again. Thankfully, the woodsman knew a little magic. He tapped the axe on the ground, and out hopped grandmother safe and sound. Grateful, they all cheered the brave woodsman. Little Red Riding Hood learned her lesson and promised never to wander off the path again. Everyone enjoyed the goodies together, and the grandmother quickly recovered with her loving family around. From that day on, Little Red Riding Hood always remembered her mother's words and knew to be careful of strangers in the forest. And they all lived happily ever after. Please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more videos.
Hansel and Gretel story.
Once upon a time, in a small, quaint village at the edge of a vast forest, there lived a poor woodcutter with his two children, Hansel and Gretel. Times were tough, and food was scarce, which made the woodcutter's second wife worried and unhappy. She persuaded her husband to take the children into the woods and leave them there, hoping they would find a better home, or at least wouldn't starve alongside their parents. Despite his reluctance, the woodcutter agreed. But Hansel and Gretel overheard the plan, and Hansel decided to gather shiny white pebbles and scatter them along the path behind them as they were led deep into the forest. When the moon rose high and illuminated the pebbles, Hansel and Gretel were able to follow the trail back home. Their stepmother was furious, but didn't give up. The next evening, she convinced the woodcutter to try again, and this time, Hansel couldn't collect pebbles. Instead, he crumbled some bread and left a trail behind. However, the forest birds ate the crumbs, and Hansel and Gretel were left lost in the forest. As they wandered, they stumbled upon a delightfully strange house made entirely of candies and sweet treats. Hungry and tired, they began to nibble at the house ravenously. A sweet but suspiciously kind old woman invited them inside. Little did Hansel and Gretel know, she was a wicked witch who lured children to her candy house. The witch, with her evil intentions, planned to cook and eat them. The witch locked Hansel in a cage, intent on fattening him up, while Gretel was forced to work. However, the clever siblings hatched a plan. They pushed the witch into the oven, and she was consumed by the flames. The children then took the witch's treasures and returned home, never to face such danger again. They lived happily ever after with their relieved parents. Please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more videos.